Hello everyone, we are live again on YouTube and LinkedIn here, bringing you another exciting episode of the Top Innovator series. This is where we dive into proven leadership ideas, game-changing strategies, and of course, the brilliant minds behind them. My name is Joseph Martens and I'm excited to introduce today's guest. With us today is Guillermo Lopez. Most recently, Guillermo was the
resilient, leading with integrity, and earning trust. And so my whole goal is to consistently just be curious, learn how do I empower teams, what can I do to help them grow. I'm also focused on these 5 pillars that I'm aggressively working on myself, and the 5 pillars that I have for myself is, one is having a good health. My health is my foundation. So it's both mental and physical. Is consistently having a good mental strength is just adapting, is not allowing anything affect you. You can get emotional, but you still have to have this strong mental strength. The other flip side is I work out. I have a routine of staying fit. It's my mantra. I've done this for many years. And then my second pillar is going back to leading with grit, is having that growth mindset. I stay consistent in reading. I have a process or habit of reading a chapter a day. It could be any books that I have in my library, or plus anything that I see or listen to a podcast. And then I focus on also having courage. There's a term of leading with courage, but what I've learned is that courage equals fear, and at times we have to take that first step and fighting that fear and having the courage. And then the other piece is communication. Being a good communicator. I've learned this quote from a gentleman named Vin Nguyen. I could be off, but he says your voice is your instrument, and you need to learn how to use your voice in communication. And that is something that I'm working fairly quickly. Just continue to communicate and using my voice, and as I communicate like ourselves or with a group or whomever. And then lastly is just leading by example. It's you're not going to be perfect, and so you just have to have these key principles and just lead by example. And maybe someday I'll write a book about this.
When you started talking about the 5 pillars and the approach, the way this landed on me was that it's a very intentional and also a very intentional approach on leadership, and also very disciplined. So I'm curious, and also when you talk about fitness, right? There's got to be a disciplined regimen behind it, otherwise it just doesn't work. So tell me more how you discovered that. How did you get there? Was this something that was always important to you, or was there a moment where you felt things are not working, or I need to try something different, I need something new, and that's where you realized that's what I'm doing? Tell me about how you got there.
Yeah, great question. I'd say. I think the fitness for me, just in general, it has always been learning yourself physically and mentally. And as a kid, you have your challenges. I have 4 younger brothers, so I was the oldest. Both my parents were working in manufacturing facilities. I watched them struggle when they lost their jobs, and having the resilience of compete, at least trying to support the family. And I took it upon myself that I can't live this way. I have to figure out a way to help my family. And so I've learned so much from my upbringing, from my parents, that over time, just in general, the physical piece of it was my safety net. It kept me away.
Interesting.
And so I slowly started building a routine where I could get up in the morning, and it's not that I'm always consistent in the morning, but that that consistently that I find time to nurture myself.
Hmm.
And by having that physical activity, it resets my health. And that's my whole premise.
Yeah, yeah. And it's something to keep you disciplined. And I imagine another benefit is that the reward is very noticeable. The reward is almost instantaneous, but also over a progression. Right? You notice you get fitter, you get in better shape, you look better. So
Hmm.
the reward is there. And that's one of the
Exactly.
and that's one of the very gratifying aspects about that. Yeah,
No, and
I
and
got.
and I'm also great. I'm also grateful because my wife is also, it has the same values. Is actively fit. She goes to the gym. I
Yep,
encourage her that in order to take care of others, you need to take care of
yep,
yourself, and that's the
yep,
basic principle.
yep. It's interesting how you shared the background, how you got to that with your brothers, right? The personal background, and obviously that's your story, right? That's the background that you have that brought you to that. It brings up the question for me: is this something that can be shared with others, right? So when we talk about leadership, when we try and teach leadership, can we share it in a way if someone does not have that personal story, if someone doesn't have the background that this was important because of that, or I'm doing this because that happened earlier on? How do you see that play out when you lead teams? Is that how do you convey these pillars that are important to you to others or get their buy-in to them?
Yes, I'd say what I've learned is as you communicate with the person, is truly understand where they're from. And my goal is to meet with them at their level. It's
Mm-hmm.
I When I lead teams, or if I'm meeting a team member within my organization or another organization, I'm always interested in learning about the individual. What is their likes? What are their dislikes? What are their struggles? And I come in as a coach, is where if I listen,
Okay.
maybe I'll guide them and find them a path. But what I've learned is how I lead by that example. It's up to them to take it and run with it. I've
Mm-hmm.
been fortunate that I've worked with so many great leaders in my life that I've learned from them as well as their challenges
Mm-hmm.
from as being an observer, and took that mentally to write it down and say,
Yeah.
okay, someday this will count. I may encounter this. How do I approach it when that day comes?
Yeah. I love that transition. Gonna ask you right for this advice that you received there or the different people who influenced you. Talk to me about some of the mentors or some of the people you looked up to that shared their insights, that shared some of their wisdom. What was important? What resonated for you? What was something you picked up from someone else and maybe
Yeah.
discovered it to be true later on? First, you didn't believe it, and later on, you realized, that person was more accurate than I thought.
Well, I think in general, I mean, I've been, you know, I would say is this:
Hmm.
working with so many people and just and under given the chance of giving me the opportunity to work in their team. That's one. And not letting them down. And I found ways to continue to push myself to help them grow. And I learned quickly as a leader, just be the contributor and helping my manager. How do I lead up? And I would say that I wasn't perfect, but I started to build relationships with my leaders. And again, having the personal relationship,
Yeah.
learning about their family. As they had kids, they saw me have kids. So to this day, I stay in touch with a few of my friends that are my mentors. And then now I found myself being a mentor for others that just became organic. And so I find myself that even on the days that I'm having a challenge, I have to go back and reflect and ask myself, how did I answer this situation when one of my employees or team members encountered this? And then I'll go back and then start coaching myself.
Okay. They are the interesting moments, right? When we can coach ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I'd say, but real quick, just a key person that I'll name drop him. A good friend of mine. I worked with him for many, many years. His name was Scott Huckleberry. He gave me a chance in being part of his team. And then when he went to another organization, he brought me on board. It didn't happen overnight. It took a couple months. But he reached out. He reached out and asked me, hey, I may have an opportunity. What are your thoughts? Just having that conversation gave me that runway. And then I told myself, this is my opportunity where I can continue to follow an individual and learn from this individual, and then observe how he grew as the CIO for the organization. And then in general in his career, where when he left and I was working for another CIO, I had to learn from other leaders. And I won't say that it was perfect, but you have to take that step back and I found myself learning how to listen.
Okay.
Just listen, learn, and collaborate. Those are my principles. Listen to the people, learn from them, learn their business function, and then find ways to collaborate.
Okay. Let me take another look at your leadership journey. We talked about the past, lessons learned. Let me take a look at today. You started off by saying that you're focusing on growth all the time. So I'm curious, what is the area, the focus of growth at the moment for you? What's an area where you say right now, this is something I'm good at, right? I know my tools, I know what to do. And at the same time, there is even more room.
Wow, great question. So I'll tell you what, you without being too technical, AI is the shiny object. AI is just the top of mind with individuals as well as businesses. And for me, and I have a small community that I work with that basically it's like my mastermind group, where each of us get together at the end of the week and we have a debrief. We're all in transition. And even if I was employed, we still have this community to support each other. And AI has been the top of discussion these past few months. And so we're sharing each other ideas. What are the tools? And for me personally I'm looking for ways on not necessarily how to create agents and automations and all these plugins. My focus is what's the strategy? What's the flywheel that I need to create to help an organization when it comes to AI in their business organization? But here are the other things that I'm learning. It's going back to one of my pillars on communication. So I'm reading 2 books on facilitation and sprint planning, just going back to roots of agile methodologies. But for me is if I envision myself being in a room with stakeholders, software engineers, and there's a strategy, how do I facilitate it? What's the methodology that I need to come up with and dumb it down so that you're not wasting 45 minutes of just jargon and then walking away from a meeting with no output. And so those are some things that I'm focusing on today. Just as I'm going through this transitional phase, is taking a step back on my pillars to focus on what can I do to get back into the arena and execute.
And getting a group to some kind of consensus or to some kind of decision is never easy, right? Especially when there are different levels of expertise involved, and it sounds like that might be the case in the groups that you're describing as well. Not easy.
Correct.
Now, let's take a look into the future. And this is not a question about positions, companies, or anything like this. It's a question about leadership journey again. If we were to have this conversation in 5 years again, What would be different what do you expect to be different in your outlook on leadership? And I know we don't have a crystal ball. I know if we have one, it's super murky, but let's speculate. What do you think might be different?
Honestly, I'd say what will be different is if I'm successful at writing this book
Okay.
on my pillars, that if I can help a young woman, a young man, as they're getting into their career on these and learning these pillars, and just see this flourish of individuals adopting these pillars and applying it in their own growth in their career, will be a huge reward. But the key is I need to write it. I need to get started.
That is helpful if you want to publish a book, right?
Yes.
Actually having it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
part of the courage. That's part of the courage of getting that first step of just
Yep.
filling out those pages.
Yep. 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 Good point. And it's not going to be a perfect first step, right? It's you talked about courage before. It's the courage to be imperfect as we make these steps and don't aim for perfection right away. Yeah. Very neat.
Exactly.
Very neat. Let me ask you one last question and then we'll wrap it up. When you look at other peers, at other tech executives, what do you think is something they very often get wrong? What is something where they have a misconception about something in leadership, or where they don't see something and it's clear to you? Is there something that comes to mind there?
Man, that's a great question. I think for most leaders, especially owners in any organization, it's the fear of, and it's twofold. One is how can they quickly grow and their brand, increase revenue, and the other piece is, do they have the right team?
Okay.
Is the team that they have that is going to help them grow? And I think where they miss the mark in some cases is having the courage of identifying the team members. And I would say I'm not perfect myself.
Yeah, sure.
If I was asked that, hey, I was brought in to execute, and if I fumbled and I didn't do my part, you have every right to let me go. And I'm okay with it, because I'll take that as a learning experience and I'll rebuild from that. But I think in most cases, there's just too many decisions that come in where the founders or the CEO has to listen to everyone to make a choice. And if you have the right team that's collaborating, and then you make a true as a group, you have a one decision, then you can be successful. And I'm not implying that those were the challenges that I had in my organization, but that's what I hear in general from my peers.
Yep. Yep. So the issue is getting the right team together, or say a bit more about that, Guillermo.
Yes, I'd say going back to this, the AI strategy that I'm thinking, it's if there's conversations with any initiative, obviously it's going to touch each functional area. Okay. It could be finance, it could be marketing, it could be manufacturing, technology, right? But to be successful, you don't need all the business functions. You just need to get the key resources from the champions from each department and come up with a task force. And it may be tactical in the beginning, but that's the small team that's going to help grow the organization.
Yep. So how to be selective, how to pick the right people. And then it probably goes back to what you said before, facilitating that team, right? Getting that team to be the most effective team that they can be. Yep.
Exactly. And empower them, listen to them. They're going to have ideas based on their functions to say, look, this is what worked, this what didn't work. These are the learning experiences. And then have another person within the team to say, okay, well, then let's figure this out. The more you can collaborate, the more you can be successful.
Yep. Awesome. Guillermo, thank you so much. many things that will stick with me, but I really look forward to the 5 pillars. Seeing that completely fleshed out, seeing that in printed version when you have it ready.
It's public now, so I have no choice.
Exactly. That was a commitment. Yeah. Guillermo, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Joseph. I appreciate it.
To everyone else who's out there, remember to like, subscribe, and watch us again for our next podcast in the Top Innovator series. And until then, make sure to keep your brain cells active.